My name is Maya Morrison. I'm 32, an acquisitions director at a commercial real estate firm. People think that sounds glamorous, but it really just means I work hard, keep quiet, and rarely talk about my personal life, especially with my family. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Coffee, emails, the quiet hum of a city that never really sleeps, until my phone buzzed a message from my mother, short, cold, and decisive. Maya, you'll need to pack your things by Sunday. Jen and Marcus need the apartment. This works better for the family. I froze, my own mother not asking, not explaining, just telling me to leave. Then my sister chimed in, cheerful as if she hadn't just stolen my home. Can we start painting this weekend? I want the bedroom done before Maya's stuff is gone. And my brother added, finally. She's been living there forever like it's hers. The cup in my hand trembled. They were evicting me, my own family, from my own home. But the cruelest part wasn't what they said, it was what they believed. They thought they had the right to. Have you ever been treated like a guest in your own life? Like the people who should have protected you were the first to push you out? If that feeling sounds familiar, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and stay, because this story, like yours, is about finding strength when family turns its back. I stared at the message again. Pack your things. It echoed in my chest like a command from a stranger. They had no idea that the apartment they were trying to claim, the one they thought belonged to some family investment, was mine. Legally, completely, utterly mine. I bought this building 3 years ago under my own company, Morrison Holdings LLC. Every brick, every lease, every key card. But I didn't reply. I just sat there, my heart breaking in quiet disbelief. Not because I'd lose a roof over my head, but because in one text, I saw my place in this family more clearly than ever before. They didn't see me as a daughter, a sister, or even a person, just a name they could move around, like furniture. And that was the moment I decided if they wanted to see how powerless I was, then maybe it was time to show them who really owned the building. I didn't respond to the message that morning. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there for a long time, coffee cold, screen still glowing, listening to the faint buzz of the city below my window. For years, I'd built my life on silence, the kind that protects you when no one believes in what you're building. The kind that keeps you sane when you realize your family measures love in usefulness, not understanding. When I finally found the strength to call my mother, she answered with that tone, the one that always made me feel like a child asking for permission to exist. Oh, Maya, you got my message. Good. Jen and Marcus need to move in by next week. You've had that place long enough. Mom, I said softly, you're asking me to leave my own home. Don't be dramatic, she sighed. We're just trying to be practical. You're established now. You can afford something else. Jen's just getting started. Be generous, Maya, generous. That word stung more than the eviction itself, because I'd always been generous, just not in ways she could see. I paid for her prescriptions the year Dad lost his job, quietly, without a word. I covered Tyler's tuition shortfall when his scholarship fell through. And when Jen maxed out her credit card, I helped her negotiate it down. She never even knew. But to them, I was the cold one. The one who never came home enough. The one who didn't know how to be part of a family. Maybe that's why, when they sent that message, no one hesitated. They all assumed I'd obey because I always did. I remember my father's voice joining the group chat later that afternoon. Maya, your mother and I have discussed this. Jen and Marcus need somewhere affordable to start their marriage. You can find another place easily. You're doing well. They used my success like a weapon, as if being established meant I owed them something. As if the years I spent working double shifts and sleeping in my car during grad school didn't count as sacrifice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old photos, birthdays, weddings, holidays, all those moments where I'd smiled on cue while feeling invisible. In every picture, Jen was at the center, beaming. I was always just to the side, holding something, a cake, a gift, a camera. Always the one helping, never the one celebrated. And yet, I never resented it. Not truly. I told myself, that's family. You love them, even when they don't see you. But that night, as the apartment lights flickered across the hardwood floor, I realized something deeper. Maybe love without respect isn't really love. Maybe it's just dependency dressed up as loyalty. So the next morning, I logged into my company portal Morrison Holdings, LLC, and opened the property file for 847 Sterling Avenue. 12 units, commercial and residential. Market value, $4.1 million. Owner, Maya Morrison. I scrolled through the access control list and paused. 4 key cards registered to my apartment. Mine, Mom's emergency spare, Jen's just in case, and one Dad had made himself last year without asking. A faint, bitter laugh escaped my throat. So this wasn't just entitlement, it was intrusion. A belief that they had a right to everything I owned. I stared out the window again. The city felt different now, sharper somehow, as if it finally reflected what I'd always known but never said aloud. When you let people take without boundaries, they stop seeing you as a person. They start seeing you as a resource. I knew then that something was about to change. I wasn't just going to defend my apartment, I was going to defend my name. Because I could feel it beneath their calm tone and polite messages, there was something else. A silence too careful, a secret too heavy, and I was about to uncover it. The next few days passed in that strange kind of quiet that follows emotional earthquakes. I went to work, took meetings, signed documents, all while my mind played the same message on repeat. Pack your things. By Thursday afternoon, I was running on muscle memory smile for clients, shake hands, answer emails until my phone buzzed again. Dad. He never called during work hours unless something was wrong. Maya. His voice came tight, controlled. I called the building management about the apartment. They refused to speak with me, said I didn't have authorization. What kind of operation are you running? For a moment, I just listened. The irony of his words sank deep. He didn't realize he was speaking to the operation. I'll look into it, I said calmly, though my pulse was pounding. When we hung up, I opened my laptop this time, not out of duty, but out of instinct. Something in his tone didn't sit right. Inside the Morrison Holdings database, I checked the ownership documents of 847 Sterling Avenue. Everything looked as it should, deed in my name, mortgage paid. But then I noticed a new folder in the legal archive labeled Refinance 2024. My breath caught. I hadn't refinanced anything. I opened the file, and there it was, a copy of a loan application, signed under my name, using the building as collateral. My signature, or rather, someone's attempt at it, scrawled across the bottom. It felt like the air left the room. They hadn't just tried to take my apartment, they had used my name, my reputation, my company. The betrayal was no longer emotional, it was legal. I sat there, motionless, the glow of the screen washing over my hands. Memories from the past week replayed: Mom's calm tone, Dad's insistence, Jen's casual entitlement. The puzzle pieces rearranged themselves into something darker, sharper. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a plan. They'd believed that if they pushed me out, they could justify taking control of the property that I'd fold, stay quiet, and they'd handle the family asset under Dad's management. And when the paperwork came through, they'd already have the building tied to a new loan, one that I would unknowingly be responsible for. My chest tightened. It wasn't just the loss of trust, it was the loss of innocence. I'd spent years forgiving small trespasses, the borrowed emergency key, the jokes about my job, the way Mom spoke over me at family dinners. But this was something else entirely. I stared out the window at the city, the skyline I'd fought to become part of. How many nights had I believed that success would buy me peace? That if I just worked hard enough, they'd finally respect me? But respect can't be bought, not from people who confuse love with control. When the first tear came, I didn't wipe it away. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was clarity. I opened a new email and wrote to my attorney, Luis Herrera. Subject: unauthorized refinance, immediate action required. I explained everything: the forged document, the attempted eviction, the misuse of my name. Within the hour, he replied, Maya, I'll file a fraud alert with the bank and request full documentation. You'll be protected. Let's keep this quiet for now, quiet. That word used to feel safe. Now it felt like a prison. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and looked around my apartment, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor, the faint scent of the candle I'd lit that morning still lingering. This space had been my sanctuary. Now it was my proof. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the family group chat. They were still talking about the move-out. Jen had sent Pinterest boards, Mom had mentioned repainting, Dad was asking if the contractor could come on Sunday. I typed one short message. Before you make any plans, you might want to confirm who actually owns 847 Sterling Avenue. Then I muted the chat. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: resolve. The kind of calm that comes not from acceptance, but from knowing the truth is finally on your side. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't about money or property. It was about power. They couldn't stand that the quiet one, the one who never complained, had built something greater than their control. But now, they would have to face it. They told me to pack my things, and maybe I would, but not before I packed up every illusion they ever had about who I was. Friday morning came heavy with the kind of silence that makes your skin remember every heartbeat. I hadn't slept much. The discovery of that forged loan document played through my mind in fragments: Mom's calm voice, Dad's confident tone, Jen's cheerful entitlement. All of it had the same echo. We own you. But the truth had finally turned. By mid-morning, Dad called again. His voice was strained, clipped, that mix of pride and fear men use when they're caught off guard. Maya, I need you to explain something to me. I went to the building management office yesterday. They said all property matters must go through the primary owner. I let a breath linger before answering. Yes, that's correct. What do you mean that's correct? I said evenly, I own the building, Dad. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then his voice cracked. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I closed my laptop, turned toward the window, and said softly, I do, actually. I've been investing since I was 26. The Sterling Avenue building was my third purchase. There was a long, wounded pause, the kind that comes when a man realizes he's not in control. Why wouldn't you tell us? You never asked. He exhaled, heavy. We're your family. And yet, I replied, you tried to evict me from my own home. You forged my name to take what was mine. What part of that sounds like family to you? He went quiet. Then came the faint sound of my mother in the background, her voice rising, sharp and defensive. Maya, don't twist things. We didn't know it was yours. Your father was only trying to help manage it. Manage, I repeated. Is that what you call forging signatures now? There was a click. She hung up. That night I barely had time to breathe before the inevitable happened. A knock. Sharp, repetitive, the kind that carries years of entitlement behind it. When I checked the security camera, I saw them all standing there, Mom, Dad, Jen, and Marcus. Together, like a tribunal. I opened the door but didn't step aside. The hallway light stretched between us like a fault line. We need to talk, Dad said. About what? About how we're going to fix this mess, Mom snapped. Jen needs a place to live. Jen stood behind her, arms folded, eyes glassy. You can't seriously mean to keep that apartment? You've had it long enough. Something inside me hardened, not in anger, but in clarity. I do mean it, I said, and I'll keep it, because it's mine. Mom's lips thinned. Don't be selfish. This is about family. Jen is starting her life. So am I said softly. Just because mine doesn't fit your version of success doesn't make it less real. Dad tried to steady the moment with diplomacy. Look, Maya, we're proud of you. We just think you should be more generous. I met his eyes, the same man who'd signed my name on that loan. I have been generous, I said quietly. I've helped when no one noticed. I've given when no one asked. But generosity doesn't mean surrender. Jen's voice broke in, shrill, emotional. You're really going to keep your precious apartment while Marcus and I scramble? You let me think you were struggling, and now you're sitting on millions? I looked at her, the same sister I once helped pay off a credit card, the same girl who used my Netflix account for years without asking. "Jen," I said gently, "you were never struggling. You just never learned the difference between want and need." She flushed red. "You've been lying to us." "No," I said. "I've been quiet." "That's not the same thing." Mom's face twisted, tears of anger shining in her eyes. "I can't believe this. After everything we've done for you." I took a slow breath. "You didn't build this life, Mom." "I did. You don't get to rewrite that because it makes you uncomfortable." The silence that followed was thick, like the air before a storm. I stepped back, still standing in the doorway. "There are 3 vacant units in this building," I said calmly. "If Jen wants one, she can apply through management like any other tenant. Credit check, proof of income, security deposit, no exceptions." "That's absurd," Dad said. "You'd make your own sister go through that?" "Yes," I said, "because that's how adults handle property, not through guilt, not through deceit, and certainly not through forged signatures." For a moment, no one spoke. Jen's tears spilled over. Mom turned away. Dad's jaw clenched in defeat. Finally, I added, softly but firmly, "You told me to pack my things. Maybe it's time you packed your expectations." Then I closed the door slowly, deliberately, and for the first time in my life, the click of that lock sounded like peace. When the door closed behind them, the echo stayed longer than I expected. It wasn't just the sound of a lock clicking, it was the sound of years of silence, swallowed pride, and small compromises sealing themselves inside that moment. I stood there for a while, hands resting on the door, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. No shouting, no apology, just distance. That night, the apartment felt heavier than usual. The quiet had weight. Every corner, the bookshelf lined with family photos, the kitchen table where I once hosted Thanksgiving, seemed to whisper the same question. Was it worth it? And for a long time, I didn't know how to answer. The next morning, my phone lit up with a storm of messages from the family group chat. "Mom, you owe your sister an explanation." Jen, "I can't believe you lied to us all these years." Dad, "We need to have a family meeting to discuss this properly." Tyler, "Typical Maya always thinks she's better than everyone." I read them slowly, one by one, until they all blurred together a familiar chorus of guilt and blame. Then I muted the thread. I used to think peace came from fixing things, from making everyone happy. But that morning, I realized peace sometimes comes from silence, from choosing not to engage in battles that only drain your soul. So I focused on my work. While they argued in private, I met with clients, reviewed contracts, and walked through renovation sites. Each deal, each decision, reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Who I was before their voices filled every corner of my mind. Still, the quiet never lasts for long. By Monday, Luis, my property manager, emailed me. 2 new rental applications for the vacant units. One is from a Jennifer Morrison. Should I process normally? I hesitated, staring at the screen. For a brief moment, I wanted to say no to protect her pride, to make it easy. But the part of me that had grown stronger over these weeks knew better. "Process normally," I replied. "No special treatment." A few days later, Luis sent another message. "Application denied. Debt-to-income ratio too high." 2 late payments on her credit report. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. The ache that rose in my chest wasn't satisfaction, it was sadness. Sadness for the girl I used to protect, and for the woman she refused to become. That evening, my phone rang again. Jen's name on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside me, maybe old habit, made me pick up. Her voice came sharp and trembling. "You really rejected my application?" "The property management company did," I said softly. "They have clear rules, Jen." "I don't interfere. You could override it." "I could," I admitted, "but I won't. Boundaries exist for a reason. You'll be okay." There was a long pause. And then she whispered, half child, half stranger, "I hate you." My throat tightened. "You're allowed to feel that way," I said quietly. "I still love you." Then I ended the call. After that, the silence returned, not painful this time, just clean. 3 weeks later, Luis sent one final update. Jen and Marcus found an apartment across town. Smaller place, higher rent, but theirs I smiled faintly. Sometimes love means letting people fall, not to punish them, but to let gravity teach what comfort never will. Over the next few months, my family adjusted to the distance. Mom's texts came only about holidays, brief, polite, stripped of warmth. Dad sent me articles about family wealth management, each one with pointed subject lines about generosity. I never replied. One Sunday evening, I stood by my window as the city lights came alive, soft glimmers spreading across the skyline like distant stars. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. They once told me to pack my things, and, in a way, I did. Not the furniture, not the clothes, but the guilt, the need for approval, and the smaller version of myself that had lived too long under their expectations. When I finally let those go, the apartment didn't just feel bigger. It finally felt like mine. It was late winter when the city began to thaw, that strange in-between season when the air still bites, but the light feels softer somehow. I remember standing by the same window I'd looked out from 100 times before, only this time, the view looked different. The street below buzzed with the familiar rhythm of life, the bakery opening early, the bus groaning to a stop, a man walking his dog wrapped in a red scarf. Nothing had really changed except me. For years, this apartment had been a place I lived in. Now it was a place I belonged to. I thought about my family, about how silence had replaced our daily noise. Mom still sent her short, practical texts about holidays. Dad forwarded his articles on financial responsibility. Jen had gone quiet altogether. And though part of me missed them, another part finally breathed freely, without waiting for permission to exist. Sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like peace, quiet, ordinary, unremarkable peace. That evening, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window as the sun slipped behind the skyline. The glass reflected my own face back at me, not the version they remembered, not the quiet middle child or the responsible one. Just me. I smiled a little, tracing the rim of the cup with my thumb. They once told me to pack my things, and in a way, I did. I packed the memories that still stung, the dinners where my words went unheard, the jokes that cut deeper than they knew, the moments I begged for acknowledgement and settled for politeness. And then, one by one, I let them go. The city outside shimmered like gold leaf across glass. A car horn echoed somewhere far away. In that moment, I realized something simple but profound: you can love people deeply and still choose yourself first. Because love without respect will empty you, no matter how loyal your heart is. And setting boundaries isn't rejection, it's protection. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of rain drifting through the half-open window. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. I didn't pray, but I whispered a quiet thank you for the lesson, for the strength, and for the stillness that followed. If you've ever had to choose peace over approval, you'll understand this feeling. So, if this story touched something in you like it did in me, leave a heart, share your thoughts, or simply stay a while. Because here, in this corner of the internet, every story about family reminds us that healing doesn't always come from going back. Sometimes it begins by finally staying where we belong. The sun disappeared completely, and the city lights blinked to life, each one a small promise that even after loss, there's always something new to illuminate the dark. And this time, the light was mine.